Thank you. Good evening, everybody. It is September 3rd, 2020. This is our school committee meeting regarding athletics, and we're going to start the evening by reading our vision. Regarding athletics. We'll have some time for public comment as it relates to athletics, if there is any, and then we will adjourn. I'll take the roll call from the school committee and ask if everybody is okay with the plan for the evening. We do just have one item on this agenda. So Mark Terry.
Present, yes.
Yep, Mark. Paul Kendall.
Here and yes.
Kathy Bates. I saw her.
Muted Kathy. Where'd she go?
Yeah, I don't see her anymore.
Oh, she's coming back in. I got her. Yep. It'll take a second.
Okay, Erin Williams, are you here?
Hey, Lori, I lost my connection. Sorry, I'm back.
Okay. Are you okay with the order of business this evening?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so then we will move forward by inviting Mr. Marks to make his presentation.
So Stephen, you should have control of everything. So if you want to share your PowerPoint.
Okay.
Thanks, Stephen.
No problem. Let's see if I can do this. Is it up? Can you guys see the first slide there?
I see it.
Okay, perfect. Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to present the return plan for athletics. This plan was put together by the group of Tri-Valley athletic directors. We've been meeting throughout the summer, and then August 21st, when we got more guidance, we met to really hammer out the details of a plan that we felt would really work in terms of what we were given and with those parameters and how we can make it safe to get kids back on the fields playing this fall. So we as a league have really rewired ourselves to create opportunities rather than focusing on crowning of champions. This year, more than ever, it's not about who won and lost. It's about who's playing. Our mission from the start has been to take all the guidelines and not only meet them, but exceed them while making a plan that, when executed, creates the safest possible opportunities for kids to play sports. We're confident that this plan gives us the best chance to achieve that goal. And again, I'm excited to share the plan with everybody. I'll go through all the slides, and then I believe there'll be an opportunity for everybody to ask questions at that point, correct?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
All right. So, first of all, thank you guys so much for being patient and all the hard work that you've been doing. Ensuring that we have a safe return to school, and the countless hours and sleepless nights that everybody's been putting in to get things together, as well as your patience on the athletics piece. We were waiting a long time for the guidance, and it kept changing and changing, just like everything else. And when we finally got what we felt was enough to put together a plan, that's when we got together. And in reality, when we sat down to meet on August 21st, the real question for us is, what do we want our league to look like? We've come up with a plan that we feel gives student athletes the best opportunity to compete, with our primary focus, which it always has been and will be, the health and safety of our student athletes. So with that being said, consistency was important for us within the league, but we also understand that each district and each school and each set of facilities has their own unique things. So there is some flexibility for us to, it's not exactly the same plan as all the other schools in terms of those little logistics, but the framework is all the same. So To start, the MIAA put out the dates for the seasons. And what they decided to do was the fall season 1 is going to start or can start as early as September 18th and go through November 20th. There won't be any state tournaments for the fall season 1. Then next, we've got the winter season, which is going to go from November 30th to February 21st. Fall season 2, which is a new season and a floating season, is going February 22nd to April 25th. Now, when this guidance came out, the MIAA had already moved some high-risk sports for the fall, which would be football and competitive cheer, to the fall season 2. Then finally, we've got the spring season that'll go April 26th to July 3rd. Now, I did put in, kind of highlighted there that it may be earlier per school contracts and per district. This is just what the MIAA is allowing us to go to. So we do have some flexibility there. Next, what sports will we run this fall? So what we're going to be offering is varsity and JV golf. For golf, as one of our 2 low-risk sports that we're having in the fall, tryouts are set to begin September 18th, with the first contest being no earlier than September 25th. The rest of the sports that we're going to offer are varsity boys cross country, varsity girls cross country, varsity JV and freshman boys soccer, varsity and JV girls soccer, and varsity and JV field hockey. All of those sports tryouts are set to begin September 26th, with the first contest not being until October 10th. It was really important for us as athletic directors to give all of our schools the chance to get the kids in the building, figure out what that's like, work out whatever kinks there might be, and get people kind of comfortable with the hybrid model that we're in. Now, again, each district within the Tri-Valley League is doing different things. So, but we all decided that would be a date that felt comfortable for us to start those other sports. The reason we're starting golf earlier is, based on course availability and the fact that later on in the season, it just doesn't get too dark for them to play. The other thing that happened is we unanimously voted to move volleyball to the fall 2 or floating season. And mainly because we didn't feel it being an indoor sport and us really trying to keep the buildings, open at the time school opens and closed right at the end of the day. We didn't feel comfortable having a sport that was indoors. And if you've been following what's been going on around the state, most, if not all, leagues have been doing the same thing. So that's what we'll be running this fall. Now, the next one, it was a hard one. This was a really tough call for us, and one that we really didn't take lightly. Middle school athletics. So we decided as a league that we were not going to offer middle school sports. And again, that was really hard for us. But the main reason that we decided that would be the right way to go is, given everything that's going on and all the, extra safety measures that we have to take just to get kids out on the field and doing it in what we feel is safely, we don't have the ability to get our athletic trainer or myself down to the middle school to oversee that program during the fall season. Also, later on in the slides, I'll talk about how sort of practice sessions have to be with cohorts and whatnot. And most of our middle school teams, or all of our middle school teams, really only have one coach with them. So it would make it really challenging to do. With that being said, we're going to look and see what opportunities exist for middle school age students, whether that's through town things or something with recreation, as well as I will say that we are exploring the option of intramurals at a middle school level. It's complex, and we'll have further conversations about that to see if we can come up with something that potentially fits the model of what's going on at our middle school. So the next is the EEA developed risk levels for all of our sports. And like I said before, golf and cross country were both placed in the low risk category. All the other sports that we're running this fall, field hockey, boys soccer, girls soccer, volleyball, although it's been moved, is in the moderate risk category. The higher risk sports, I told you, had already been moved. So this is from the latest guidelines or guidance that we got from the EEA. And this goes, for everything in this presentation and this program to, what we're doing in the schools, everything's fluid. If anything were to change, we have the ability to make those changes and adjust accordingly. So that's where we are currently right now. The league, what we decided to do is divide the league into 2 pods. So that what we know is tradition in terms of the Tri-Valley League being broken up into Tri-Valley Large and Tri-Valley Small based on overall school enrollment is no longer what we're doing for this year, or at least fall 1 season. So what we decided to do was really create pods based on geography. So our pod will be us, Bellingham, Holliston, Hopkinton, Medway, and Norton. The benefit of doing it in these pods is that obviously one of our goals throughout this entire program is to limit contact with other districts and other people. So if we were going to cross over and play a game against everybody, now we'd be playing against 11 other schools, whereas right now we'll only play against 5 schools throughout the fall season. In terms of numbers of contests, there will be 10 contests for soccer and field hockey and 5 for cross country. Golf is to be determined because, again, a lot of that's based around course availability, and we're still working that out with all the local courses and coaches. Next, practice sessions. Here's what the limitations that our league decided on from a meeting on August 21st. Preseason practices can take place any day with 1 day off in a 7-day period. Once the regular season contests begin, which again is either the 25th for golf or October 10th for everything else, practice sessions will be limited to 3 sessions Monday through Friday. I am going to propose that Ashland holds practices on Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Ashland practice sessions will be limited to 2-hour sessions. And then we get into some of the guidelines, like the EA has limited the amount of players and coaches on one playing surface to 25 people. Training activities for moderate and high risk sports must be performed in cohorts. So we have to have cohorts of 10 students that are going to work together for the entire season during practice and not necessarily mix those cohorts. Again, that was another challenge with doing middle school sports, but at the high school level, we will be able to do that. Training areas must be at least 14 feet apart. So each group needs to be 14 feet apart. Each cohort needs to be 14 feet apart from the other cohorts. In terms of competitions, and this is another change. So we have established that in our league, we are going to play all of our games and meets on Saturdays and Sundays, with the exception of golf based on course availability. The reason we did this is we will only be in contact with one other school or one other district for the weekend. So it would be a home and home. So for instance, if on October 10th, if we were set to play Bellingham, all of our teams would play 2 games against Bellingham, 1 Saturday, 1 Sunday, 1 at home, 1 away, and we'd make sure that they're even in terms of games here and games there. Team rosters. This is something else that is a little bit different. So game rosters, we're going to limit to 20 participants per team. And the reason being is that in the guidelines, there's a limit of 50 people that can be at an event in the field of play. So if we had 20 student athletes from each team participating, we're already at 40. Then you add in a couple referees, then you add in the athletic trainer, the athletic director, the people at the score table, we're getting to 50. So we're going to limit those rosters to 20 per, and we are also trying to figure out if, in terms of coaches, can we allow more than 2 per team to make sure we stay under that 50. Another thing, this is a real tough one for us, but something that we really just felt was best for the Tri-Valley League and best for the student athletes that we're trying to get back out on the field. The TVL athletic directors, we met with all the principals and we talked about what we should do with spectators. the guidelines right now are that we can also have 50 spectators in the, in the stands or around the fields. So we felt that it would be really hard to police that or manage that in terms of what do you do with the 51st person who shows up to see their kid play, but someone else brought 5 people or whatever. So we thought it was going to be really challenging to do that. And the principals voted unanimously that we would not have fans at Tri-Valley League games this fall. One thing that we are looking into is how can we live stream all of our events so people have an opportunity to see their kids and their friends and the community play. So we're looking at a couple different options into that, and more on that to come when we figure out exactly what we're going to do. Weekend games. So the pros of weekend games. Number one, as I'm sure many of you know, we're looking at Triple E coming back this fall. So this will help us in terms of limitations with Triple E and making sure that we can get our games in. So we can start our games early. We can go 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock, and 3 o'clock, something like that at the high school. We wouldn't have any early releases from class. Big one is obviously trying to limit contact, right? So we'll have no weekday visitors to the school. Nobody from other schools, other district coming to our school to possibly interact more with our community. So also players will arrive in uniforms. Like I said at the beginning, we want to not only meet, but exceed some of the guidelines that we've been given. So we've made a rule or a decision that we're not going to utilize locker rooms at all. So with students showing up in their uniforms, nobody's going inside, the locker rooms are closed, and we're ready to go. Additionally, referee availability and transportation availability went into play there. Individual sport modifications. So the way this worked is the MIAA individual sport committees met, and for all the fall 1 sports that were being offered, they came up with modifications to the current or the previous set of rules to make everything safer. And we waited for a little while, and they did come out August 28th. So those have been publicized. They are on the MIAA website. I have copies. They're out there, and it does change the game. And for some, that might be challenging. But again, we go back to the fact that our main goal here is to give kids an opportunity to play, an opportunity to get there and get out there and do it. So there are some pretty significant modifications that make the game safer. And we're all gonna, learn those and study them and make sure that we're ready to go once everything starts. So, and obviously in order to have a safe and productive season, we have to make sure that all team members and coaches adhere to these sport modifications. So we've also been working with referees through our referee assigner to make sure that they are very well aware of the rules and are ready to, referee contests with the modifications. Next is coaching out of season. So the MIAA has a rule. It's rule number 40, and it's around out of season contact with student athletes. And the current policy is that when it's out of season, coaches cannot get together and hold practices. They can hold 2 meetings, and it's a way to kind of give kids an opportunity to try out other things and do it. And it's a rule that's been around for a long time and a rule that is there for a reason. The MIAA decided that this rule would be waived. However, they put it in the hands of our principals. I do want to take this opportunity to thank Kelly St. Kerr for all of her help and guidance and support throughout this, because the principals, as well as dealing with trying to open up schools based on what the MIAA came out with, also put a lot on the principals to try and help do this. So Kelly, I know you're here. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. So at the athletic directors meeting, the principals unanimously voted that we will keep Rule 40 in place as it was written and as it's in the handbook. So their coaches will not be able to run practices or out of season workouts. and things like that, it's going to be the same that it's been in the past. So they can still have, 2 team meetings, but no sports specific activity and practices. This is important that the consistency across our league, everybody was doing the same thing in terms of competitive advantage and sending a consistent message, as well as we have a new district in the MIAA, which, basically is for voting purposes, but that is the Tri-Valley League, the Bay State Conference, and the Hockomock. And all 3 of those leagues decided to keep the rule in place. So we had conversations with them. Next, transportation. Our goal is to continue to offer transportation to all athletic competition or all athletic contests. For athletics, we are going to abide by the same policies, same procedures that we have for the entire district when the kids take the buses in the morning or in the afternoon. It's going to be no different for athletics. We'll, follow everything to a T will be the exact same. So one thing that we have been doing that will continue, our golf team will continue to transport themselves to home matches at Pinecrest. Other than that, they have buses for away matches. But we've been able to work out, hopefully, to have transportation for all of our events. Now, I highlighted there, we can consider parent and family transportation. I think I would strongly encourage us to continue offering transportation for this for a number of reasons, but we can certainly have further conversation if that's something that we want and need to look into. Event day management. So all teams arriving at the high school would come dressed ready to play. And like I said, and locker rooms will not be available. We plan to have the bathroom facilities at the high school open. And it says middle school there, but I've made a change since I first put together this proposal where we're going to keep all games at the high school, keep it consistent, keep it there. And most importantly, our athletic trainer can be at one site. If a student athlete needs to be treated after the game and another game's coming on, we can't go back and forth from the high school to the middle school. So all visiting team coaches will provide accurate roster, including coaches with their cell phone numbers and email addresses. And this is for contact tracing. So we will know exactly who was there. I will have all the information on the referees and all of our event staff. And that way, if we need to do any contact tracing, either from our end or from the other school end, we know exactly who we need to get in touch with. Hand sanitizer and hand washing must take place of utilizing the bathrooms. A custodian potentially will be on duty to assist with the cleaning and disinfecting of the bathrooms as well as whatnot during the games. We have hand sanitizer available for the opposing team and the scorer's table. Disinfectant. Can you guys still hear me? I just got something that said my internet is unstable.
You did freeze for a minute there, Stephen.
Am I back?
In and out.
Yeah.
You can try turning off your video and just try an audio only to see if that helps.
Is this better?
I hear you,
Still
but
in and out.
your face is frozen, but I can hear you.
Oh, that's great. Perfect. All right, hold on. Let me, I will stop my video and I will continue to talk through the presentation.
We can hear you good.
Yeah, but we can't see the.
Yeah, I can't
I
see the
lost the
presentation.
Do you guys have access to the presentation?
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Can you share that and I'll just talk from here? Sorry.
I can share if you want.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, I was going to pull it up
Thank you.
otherwise. Yep.
1 second. Right, so you were
I was on event day management. No, keep going. Keep going.
Right
Yep,
there.
there we are.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. In terms of face coverings, we are going to make sure that all coaches and all student athletes are wearing them at all times. And we've had good conversations within the league about what kind of face coverings that people should be wearing. I know that these gator face masks have been very popular throughout the summer. A number of districts, ours included, have said that those are not sufficient enough for school. So we're going to go with that for athletics as well. And the other schools have assured me that if we're playing them, most are probably not going to allow them, but if we play them, that their athletes will not be in Gator face masks. If they do show up in Gator face masks, we will not let them play. So, but the league is committed to making this happen however we can. So, let's see. I already talked about the bench areas. The benches for our team and their team must be socially distant at all times. So we will we'll have the benches, and we'll also have areas labeled and either with cones or with paint where student athletes need to stand so they can remain socially distant when they're on the bench, because that's a hard thing to monitor sometimes. In terms of sharing of water, there is none of that. So all team members must bring their own labeled water bottle. We will provide water. We'll make sure we have that, but we will not have any sharing of water bottles at all. Thank you. If you can go to the next slide for me, Paul. Thank you. Practice day management. Again, locker rooms will not be open. We have had some discussion about making the locker rooms available for the kids, the cohort that's in school that day. So could we have the locker rooms available for the cohort that is in school Monday and Tuesday? I believe we're going to end up going with just closing the locker rooms as a whole, because it could potentially be hard for us to monitor. And again, it's just putting kids inside in a closer space, and we're not too comfortable with that. So that hasn't been decided 100%, but I'd say we're pretty close to just saying we're going to have no locker rooms at all. When I talked at the beginning about not only meeting, but exceeding the guidelines say that locker rooms can be open with 50% occupancy. Again, I am not comfortable with that for us here in Ashland. So that is what we are going to do. If athletes are on a remote learning day, they should arrive at practice no earlier than 5 minutes before and get in their practice gear. Hand sanitizer will be issued to each team member and coach before practice sessions and will be available throughout the practices. All team members, coaches are required to bring their own labeled water bottle to practice as well. Areas around the team benches, just like in games, we're going to be cleaning and sanitizing everything. Our athletic trainer will be available at all athletic practice sessions, with the exception of golf because they're off campus. And one thing that is really important to note is we've made a commitment to the school as we get started here that we are going to close the doors at 3 o'clock, right at the end of the day. So our athletic trainer, Amy Mendoza, and I have set up a satellite training room for her up at the field. So she'll be able to get to school before 3 o'clock, get whatever, bags of ice, whatever she needs, and be able to treat kids the same way she normally would up there, have a little bit of privacy, and we won't have to get back in the building unless, of course, it's an emergency. We'll be able to get in. So we talked about face covering, same thing during practices. And when student athletes are not in a drill or a teaching session, they must remain socially distant at all times. So, all right, next slide, please, Paul. We just talked about this with the training room and using an alternative space. Everyone must use, hand wash and sanitizer before going in there. There would be a 3-person limit in the athletic training room inside. We are in the process of measuring once we get the table up into the satellite room, how much space we really have that can be safe. So, but there will be a limit of how many people will be in there. That's to come. We should know more early next week in terms of that. Face coverings on at all times. And if you are not attending school or a remote session due to feeling ill, you're going to be required to stay at home. One of the things that just came to light in a meeting that we had a couple days ago is we're going to implement a screening policy that coaches are going to do with their student athletes every single day, where temperature will be taken and we'll ask them if they've had any symptoms. We'll go through the list of all the symptoms. If they've had anything or have a temperature, they will go home immediately. So that will also help us with contact tracing. we'll be able to look back every single day and find out who was where and how they were feeling and if there were any symptoms. So lastly, Amy Mendoza will be in constant contact with the APS nursing staff, Sergeant Ed Berman, and regarding best practices, policies, and procedures. And that has already started. We've already had a meeting to talk about this sort of stuff. So we'll continue to do that more. In closing, I just want to reiterate that, if you can go to the next slide, Paul, we are really confident that this plan is as good as it can be given the guidelines that we have. We think that it's safe. We're excited for the kids to be able to get out on the fields and compete and do it in a way that feels good to them and feels good to us, the ones administering the athletic events. So again, thank you for letting me share what the plan is going to be for the Fall 1 season. And I'd like to open it up for questions, comments, anything along those lines. So thank you.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep, I can
Yeah.
hear you. Yeah.
Okay. So for this part of the meeting, we're going to open it up to questions just from the school committee. We'll have our discussion. I know it says in our agenda vote, but my understanding is that we would be voting at our next meeting next week, and that's just a placeholder, and this is our opportunity for discussion. And then we'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is the opportunity for public comment. And I see more than 50 people on here, and I don't know how many of you want to comment. But I would just ask that you raise your hand. And if you can't figure out how to raise your hand in your screen, you can just do it physically and I will look for you and call on you. I ask that you keep your comments to between 2 and 3 minutes because we do have a lot of folks and there's potential for a lot of comment. And I will start, first I want to start by thanking you, Stephen, for that thorough presentation and for all the work you and your staff and your coaches are doing. And I know just like us, you know, you have your own group of people that you're responsible for, and then you have to deal with the MIAA, and then you have to deal with all the other leagues, all the other teams in our league. And so I know it's no small task, and we appreciate you and everything that you're doing to try to make this work. So having said that, though, I know that there are going to be questions and concerns, and I want to first open it up to school committee to start asking your questions or making your comments. Who wants to go first? Anybody?
I'll start, Lori. Stephen, I want to start by echoing, Lori's comments. I mean, the amount of work and thought that's gone into trying to find a way to make this work and continue to be a valuable experience for kids is apparent, at least to me, in a number of issues you guys had to think about. So I really do appreciate your work, the work of ADs at the other schools and building principals to the extent they've been involved. One of my concerns, just to put it out there, is the potential for inconsistency in protective efforts among schools. And so you highlighted one comment in particular about some districts might allow for the use of gaiters and others won't. But if we're a sort of mask required kind of community and a gaiter doesn't cut it here, they're going to honor that. But I'm wondering if you could highlight for us if there are other places where there are going to be deviations between what we're going to require here in Ashland or when playing us as compared to other districts, or if really the gaiter is the only thing.
Yeah, sure. And it's a good question. I just brought this up in our meeting yesterday. So we all talked about it. And like I said, a number of districts are having the same policy. And some districts, aren't sure whether or not gaiters are going to be allowed there or at athletic events, but everybody was consistent with the message like, hey, if you're uncomfortable with that or that doesn't fit within Ashland, we'll abide by that. Like we'll make it, because everybody wants to give the opportunities to the kids to get out and play. So they've made a commitment that they will all work with us on that. Even if they say, somewhere else, they let it, like it was allowed in the summer, right? So
Yeah, and that's sort of my concern, candidly, in having one child who plays sports, played baseball over the summer. There was inconsistency. If you went to Bellingham, one thing was okay. If you were in Ashland, something different was okay. And I appreciate the fact that everybody's going to try to make it work. The concern I'd have is, if we're playing Bellingham, and Bellingham is going to follow the same rules as Ashland is, that's fine, right? That everybody's kind of going with the same rules. But if Bellingham is typically allowing, just in this example, Gators, and they played Hopkinton the week before, the risk of exposure there, if Gators are not as effective, is picked up at one point, and in that case can be skipped. So that even though we're kind of trying to keep the rules okay for whichever school has the more strict rules, I think there's still a more significant risk. Sorry about that. There's a more significant risk in that than otherwise would be expected. So I'm going to mute myself for the phone.
That's all right. And thank you. There's certainly going to be more conversation about what that looks like. Getting the framework for what our season is going to look like. And as you know, with everything, any decision that we try and make in terms of what's going on right now, you ask a question and we come up with 3 or 4 other ones. So there's certainly going to be further discussion within the league about what that's going to look like. And I don't foresee it being a problem, to be honest with you, Mark.
Yeah. Thank you, Stephen.
Sure.
Stephen, I have a question. So the game transportation is mostly going to be Connolly bus the way it's been traditionally?
Yes.
So they would be abiding by the new bus rules, which include windows down. And then if the kids are not having access to locker rooms, you're potentially putting sweaty kids on a bus in the fall and early, what I'm thinking is you're going to have some cold and maybe, sick kids from temperature changes like that. Have we thought about that? Can we mitigate it by, like reminding all the kids to bring sweatpants and sweatshirts? I wouldn't want to be getting on a bus where the windows are going to be down after playing a game for an hour.
Yeah. Either would I. We haven't gotten into that detail in terms of what, we'd have the kids wear, but obviously, if it's cold, we'll have them wear sweatshirts and make sure they're okay.
And as far as cross country is concerned, because I know the governor had kind of waffled back and forth on that. On some of the trails, say you have 2 runners that are sprinting together, they're obviously going to be breathing hard. They won't be masked, right? And they could, if a trail is less than 6 feet, be very close to each other. So I had heard some rumors about some timed, delayed starts and sort of like chip timing versus a regular race.
Yeah, there's a number of modifications that we can make. We've had discussions and we haven't landed on what we're going to do yet, but we've had talks of even doing virtual meets where, one team is running at their place, the other team's running at their place. We've talked about staggering it. So, one team shows up at 9 o'clock, the other team shows up at 10 o'clock, and you can send the kids out staggered. You could send 3 or 4 at a time and just at the end deduct the time so we know where their time stands. So we're certainly in discussion about what's going to be the best there, as well as discussions about masks being worn during cross country. So more on that to come. Good question, though.
And then as far as intramural sports potential at the middle school, are you only looking to do them for sports that don't exist for a town option? Or there's fall baseball that's being offered by AYBS, and then there's flag football, and I think the Irish are still having their football. So would you be looking to just supplement where there's not town stuff available?
Intramurals right now for the middle school, we'd be looking at the sports that we typically offer for middle school athletics in the fall. So that would be, other than volleyball, because that's been moved, and football, those 2 have been moved. So we'd be looking at potentially field hockey, soccer, and cross country Those are the three that we're looking at. And I do want to reiterate that, you know, we are certainly looking into it, but we want to make sure that if we do something, it works with what's happening in the middle school and how they're using their cohorts during the day and things like that. So further conversations are certainly to be had, but those are the only three sports that we'd really be looking into doing intramural
Okay.
sports.
If you had to make a guess at this point, to like a double guess, one, what would be like a season start date for intramurals, and what would the, like in your mind, percentage likelihood we can pull off intramurals?
Guesses. I love that right now. That's a tough one.
And that's nothing to hold you to.
You know, we would not start anything just like with the high school until kids got into school and were able to get comfortable. And, you know, it would be shorter than those high school seasons. You know, that is for sure. And then I apologize. What was your second question that you wanted me to guess on?
Just percentage likelihood that you think we can pull an intramural season off.
I can't put a number on it. I hope we can.
Okay.
I hope we can. It's a new conversation that Mr. DiGirolamo and I started to have. So, yeah.
Thanks.
Sure.
Mr. Kendall, was that you?
So yeah, I mean, I appreciate some of the things you said, Stephen, because just for everyone's sake, I did meet with Stephen on Tuesday and went over a group of questions I had for him, one of which was the Gator issue. As a follow-on to that, I appreciate you discussing it with the other ADs. What do you think the likelihood we can get everyone in our pod, to Mark's point, to commit to that, just commit to that, right? As opposed to, it's okay when you're playing team A, but not when you're playing team B, right? So as opposed to just, you know, where do you think the ADs in schools in our pod particular are about just saying, hey, let's just not do it in our pod?
Very high. I mean, I can say that we are fortunate to be in this league for a number of reasons. You know, the coaches, many of which are on this call, and I'd be remiss to say thank you guys and everybody and girls for showing up. I appreciate it. The coaches, the players, and the athletic directors and principals are all in constant contact, and we all have similar philosophies in terms of what we want to do. And right now, everybody's main goal is being able to provide opportunities. So I really can't see a scenario where a team's going to say, you know what? No, we're not going to do that, and therefore we can't play Ashland. I just don't, or play anybody else. I don't see that happening. So I think it's very high.
Yeah, and just to be clear on what I was asking, it's not whether that would happen, but can we get everyone to just say, we're not doing it regardless who we're playing? Right?
Yeah.
So I think that would help what Mark was saying about, you know, if we're doing it for a reason, you know, then the reason exists, and having it just be with us but not with someone else, you know, makes our controls less effective, right?
Yeah, certainly.
So, I mean, I guess we talked about a bunch of things the other day, but some of the new things, looking at it, you talked about some of the cohorts. So for the practice, there's going to be cohorts of 10 that will be together either throughout the season or when our rules change on us again. There's been any talk about those cohorts and trying to align them with our educational cohorts as well, to further limit the need for that contact tracing or anything like that?
Do you mean in terms of keeping the cohorts with the alphabet A through K and alphabet?
Exactly. So you know, you're doing it that way, so you're further limiting the mixing.
Yeah, we've talked about it, and the reality is it would be really challenging once you get to competitions to have not practiced with your teammates, with potentially half of your teammates, right? And we couldn't play a game, or it would be really challenging to be able to field a team of just half the alphabet. So if we were to do that for practices, then they would still be all together on the weekends if they were playing games.
Yeah, maybe my question wasn't clear. So you're splitting them up into groups of 10, that those 10 will be the same 10 together in practice all for the foreseeable future until something changes.
Yes.
So, but what you just said, it has nothing to do with what I said, because that's the same. I'm grouping these 10 together. They're not going to practice with these other group of 10, and I'm going to put them together on the weekends. What I'm saying is that group of 10, and I know it might be challenging because they may not lay out and have 10 that's an A through K, and it might not work out, but has there been any, thought of trying to take those groups of 10 and align them with the cohorts they already have for educational purposes?
No, there hasn't, but we can certainly look into it. And if the numbers work, then yeah, we can try and do that.
Okay. And the EEA's limit of 25 people per playing surface.
Mm-hmm.
Did they give any more guidance on that? Because that seems awfully vague and doesn't make a lot of sense if we have people on, say, the turf field that we're going to say, well, that's a playing surface, so we can only have 25 people on this very large area.
Well, in terms of playing surface for a game, field hockey has gone to 7-on-7. That's one of the modifications. So that's 14, and then 2 referees. So we're at 16, right?
So
soccer.
I'm sorry. So was that only for games, or was that?
It's for
games
both.
And practices?
However, with practices, and is Sergeant Berman on this call? I believe he is.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and Sergeant Berman, please correct me if I'm wrong, but our understanding of it is as long as the playing surfaces are clearly defined, right? So for a game, it's clearly defined. It's the entire turf field. Right. For a practice session, we could, and I have laid out on the turf field, we could make 2 clearly defined playing surfaces and go widthwise. We could also fit 3 clearly defined playing surfaces on the turf field, cutting it into thirds. So as long as that is clearly defined and clearly marked, and the cohorts stay 14 feet apart, that still falls in line with the guidelines. Is that correct, Sergeant Berman?
That's correct. As long as your cohorts are 14 feet apart from each other.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can divide up the playing surface into multiple areas.
Yes.
Okay. So maybe just the terminology, the playing surface, was what got me there. So
yeah,
right.
Practice versus game, different playing surface. Yeah. Thank you. Good question.
And let's see. I appreciate you saying, I think it's one of the things I mentioned again is trying to figure out a way we can do something at the middle school.
Yeah.
I think that's an important one. If it's important for our high schoolers, it's certainly important there. I understand, the challenges you have for monitoring that. So we'd like to continue that, see if we can maybe have some option for consideration next week, if that's a possibility at all. And let's see, was there anything else? And I guess, Ed's on. I think we also saw Audrey is on as well. Just, I'd like to hear their thoughts on both what this plan is, anything that changes they'd like to see, especially, given the new information. I would assume that our health department had the same concern on face coverings, but it sounds like you're addressing that. So.
Audrey, you going first?
Well, can I pipe in first? Paul, can we do that just when everybody's done making their comments, and then maybe they can address all of our concerns at the same time? Because I think one of the things I want to ask about, you guys might be in a better position to answer. So if it's okay with you, I just want to go through whatever Kathy wants to offer and ask my questions, and then maybe all 3 of you can join in and trying to address some of the things that you heard. tonight.
Okay, and I'll throw this one out there because I think this has to do also with Sergeant Berman and Ms. LaCroix. So I also spoke with Stephen on Tuesday about how do we decide whether it's appropriate to play another community, right? So each Friday we are going to be meeting, looking at our data to see if we need to make transitions or what decisions we need to make locally. And how do we also apply some kind of metric, even though it's difficult to do that even locally. But if one of our teams in our pod, if they have an uptick and they are, colored red or whatever our metric is, how do we go about making sure we're making decisions that are in our best interest, and maybe saying, you know what, right now is not a great time to host or to go to their community given their data. So that was another thing we talked about. So I'd love to, when the time comes, hear their take on that. Just trying to see whether there was one more.
I can add one thing to that, Paul, if I can.
Sure.
I brought that up with the other ADs as well, and there are a number of other districts that are grappling with the same thing, and how can they be doing the same thing on their end? So we're not the only district. Everybody's thinking the same thing, and that will be further discussion. How can we all share information, get the best information as quickly as we can? Because, for instance, if we're meeting Fridays, there's potentially a game that next morning. So, but all the other districts are thinking the same thing, and I was glad to hear that.
And you shared with me, I brought it up at I think our last school committee meeting, and we talked on Tuesday, and you shared your thoughts with me on how whatever decision we make here, not tonight, but whatever decision we make on sports, how does that relate to our educational transition decisions, right? If we go based on our data and things like that to remote learning, what does that mean for sports? And so you shared your thoughts with me on Tuesday. So I think it's probably valuable to share it with the group as well.
If we are out of school, we will not be playing. As simple as that. Okay. There's a, the MIAA came out with guidance that says if schools go fully remote, that I believe it says that then school committees, you can do a presentation and they could approve to have you play sports. But if we start this and then all of a sudden we go out, we're not playing. We're following. If school's out, we're out. Okay, so we're out.
Thanks, Stephen. I'm set, Lori.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Kathy?
Yeah, I just had some questions, like in regards to practices, Stephen. Are all the practices going to be at the high school? So all teams will be up on the different fields practicing?
Sure.
Is that
so
the idea?
That's one of the ideas, and one that we're strongly leaning towards. The middle school has great fields and plenty of space over there, maybe even a little bit better space than at the high school, but transportation becomes an issue, right? In the past, we were able to have kids hop on one of the buses because they'd go back and forth. That's not that we just can't do that this year for a number of reasons. Also, do we want kids driving over or have parents drive them over? There are some sports where it's like, hey, if you sign up, just like, practice starts at this time there. The same conversation that I say about middle school sports and goes back to being consistent. It would be hard. Amy and I, the athletic trainer, and I would have to split up at that point. One of us would have to be at the middle school. One of us would be at the high school. We have talked about and mapped out a way to fit all the teams that need practice space at the high school, all practicing in one practice session. So all going, whether it's 3:15 to 5:15, 3:30 to 5:30, because what we don't want to happen is go 2 practice sessions, and then a week later we need to cut it down because of Triple E. So this will make sure that we can get in and get out and stay consistent throughout the entire season. So most likely it's going to end up staying all at the high school.
And all at the same time, is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay, because that was another question of mine, is how are you going to be monitoring all the practices, like going just from team to team and just being a presence there and making sure things are running the way they're supposed to be running?
Yeah, both myself, our trainer, and the coaches are going to go through a very thorough training. And I know that everyone wants, all the coaches, all student athletes, everyone wants this to happen. And the only way it can happen is if we're really following all the guidelines. So I will be all over the place. Amy will be all over the place, making sure, as will the coaches. So.
And so I think you just mentioned training. So have you already, or are you going to have specific training with the coaches about how these guidelines are supposed to be enforced?
Yes, I have not yet. I'm waiting on hopefully that approval, but then once we get that, we're going to have meetings upon meetings and make sure that they know exactly what's expected of them. And to make sure that everybody stays safe and follows by the rules. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Anything else, Kathy?
No. Do any of the teams have, like, I think, so is the limit 25 even at practice? So are there any teams that are going to be, potential of being bigger or a larger number?
That's a great question, and that's come up. So game rosters are limited to 20. I started off by saying this is all about opportunities, right? There might be a situation where someone might try out for a team and not make it, and numbers dictate certain things, but we want to try and give opportunities to as many kids as we possibly can. So there's a potential scenario. Now, the numbers right now look pretty good for this not to happen, but there could be a potential scenario where a team has more than 20 players on it. So only 20 could dress and travel to that game. Okay. So then coaches would have to work it out in terms of who's their game roster that day and who isn't.
Mm.
Yeah.
But what about practice though? Practices then?
No, fine. We wouldn't get over 25.
All right.
Yeah.
I guess that's it for now, Lori, if you want to ask some questions.
Thanks. Some of my questions have been asked already, but I'm wondering, Stephen, backing up a little, I guess, in the decision-making process with the other teams in the league, and I don't know how much involvement you might have had following what the MIAA was doing. And we've had it on our end with different things in terms of like, where do you draw the line? For instance, how we decided that we weren't comfortable with 3 feet of guidance. We were comfortable with 6 feet, 3 feet of distance. We're comfortable with 6 feet of distance. And so you're having to do the same thing in terms of, whether you're going to allow low risk sports or what's been categorized as moderate risk and high risk. Mm. And so, are you able to share, are you part of any discussions that you can share with us, the thinking about how you drew the line and where you drew the line and and this is maybe where Audrey and Ed could jump in addition to answering Paul's questions, but just sharing with me, and I'll ask it really directly, like, why is it okay for us to be taking a moderate risk versus drawing the line at low risk?
Yeah, that's a great question. And when the guidelines came out from the EEA and DESE and MIAA, their committees, which were made up of medical professionals, coaches, everything across the board, came out with guidelines that said, as long as certain modifications were being met, that moderate risk sports could compete. Okay. So that's not something we just decided. That was what we're following. So for instance, baseball and softball were also moderate risk, and they played all summer because they made those modifications. So that's where we went there. And again, we tried to exceed some of the guidelines, and that's one of, tough decisions, but technically we could have 50 spectators. Technically we can have the locker rooms open to 50% capacity, but we are trying to make this as safe as possible for the people that it most immediately impacts, and that is our student athletes. So.
And I don't know if Audrey or Ed, you guys have anything to add to that, just in terms of, and I ask it for not just, you know, the people that are choosing to play, and I totally support the need for us to try to provide whatever opportunity we can safely provide for the athletes 100%, but also acknowledging that they're going back into a building where there are other students and staff there. And I just want to have a full understanding of what they're bringing back into the building and making sure that everybody is comfortable with that. So I don't know if Audrey or Ed, and if you can go ahead and answer if you remember any of Paul's questions first. And Paul, if you need to remind them what it was you wanted them to address, you can feel free to do that.
So I can answer the question, what we're kind of talking about right now. So when DPH released the guidelines for sports where it rated it low, moderate, or high, they literally just said the sport. They didn't, the guideline itself did not have any of the modifications in it. That's where MIAA came into play, where they came up with the actual guidelines, where they used their professionals to really make it safe. For, you know, just one of the examples that just I keep bringing to mind is, for example, soccer. If the ball goes out of play now, the kids can't pick it up and throw it back in. The ball was not being touched. So it's modifications like that that have almost made that moderate risk sport a low risk.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. That's what I want to try to understand. Paul, I'm sorry if we lost track of what you wanted answered.
Yeah, no, so it was kind of a couple points, just, you know, both Ed and Audrey's thoughts on the plan, you know, kind of, you know, similar to what Ed just mentioned about the risk levels, and, you know, sounds like, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, the modifications that are being done, you know, put us at a lower risk and a comfortable level of risk in their points, stuff like that. And also maybe, you know, more in Ed's court of helping us make that decision of, you know what, town ABC, it's probably not a great idea to be, you know, mingling with them this weekend, and how do we make that decision? And it was both to Stephen as far as his conversations with the other ADs and towns on the receptiveness of that conversation, but also in Ed's court, which is, I know, very challenging to try to, you know, programmatically determine something like that, but how we go about making those decisions.
So let's use the summer, for example. So we as a town came up with the proposal that any youth sports that wanted to use any of the town fields had to present a safety plan to me. And I reviewed the plan, you know, tweaked them with, you know, with the people that were submitting them. And then once they were approved, they were allowed to book the fields. But obviously, you know, not everything follows in play, but I was going around randomly checking fields to make sure that things were in compliance. And I got the nickname from the baseball that I was the COVID cop. You know, but again, what was interesting was, listen, you know, it's going to be just like with Stephen. I'm going to be around, Stephen's going to be around. And if we see something that's not safe, we're going to stop it and correct it immediately.
Audrey?
Just curious about contact tracing. How are you planning on handling that?
Who's got the answer?
Yes, me. So we'll have lists of, again, all the players, all their contact information if we need it, and all the referees and everything. So all the athletic directors are going to be in touch. If there is a case, we'll have a list, and then I would actually defer potentially to you and Ed, what would be the next step? Because I have not gone through the contact tracing process yet, but we'll have all the information that we need for it.
Yeah, if there was if we thought there was an exposure, it would be a team effort. Obviously, I would be Stephen would be in contact with me and Audrey. we would then be in touch with that athletic director and the Board of Health in that city or town. And we'll be able to wrap it pretty quickly and start the tracing almost immediately.
Other questions from committee members?
I had just one more, Lori. I guess I'm back to a more basic question. You know, I really do believe in the value of sports and being a part of a team. Certainly, you know, encouraging kids to be physically active is critical. I'm wondering whether or not there was ever a point at which you were talking about something other than competitive sports, you know, sort of keeping it in Ashland, or each school district keeping it at their respective school and doing something else that looks like field hockey, soccer. I mean, it probably would never be more than a glorified scrimmage if you had competitive components to it. I understand it's not the same, but I'm just wondering whether there was consideration of doing that in terms of minimizing contact with people in other communities.
We didn't have much conversation about it because we were following the guidelines that were sent to us that said if the modifications were made that we could play those sports. But we never got to a point where we were talking about just intramurals being at our own schools. If anything, we were talking more about would it make sense to move fall 1 to that fall 2 season. So what the MIAA came out with is we could have decided that just like we did with volleyball, move everything to the fall 2 season, as well as if we start the fall 1 season and the season can't be completed, we can then move it to fall 2 and finish it then. So, you know, that's where we're at. And just so you know, at this point, 10 of the 12 Tri-Valley League schools have approved this plan. So myself and Holliston are presenting tonight. And that's where we're at in terms of our league. So.
And maybe just one other process question, Stephen. I apologize. I'll be done.
Don't apologize.
There are a number of things that, you know, obviously have been raised as questions in this meeting. I'm sure there are a million other things that we haven't asked about that you guys are still working on. Do you think we'll have more answers to some of those questions when we bring this up at next week's meeting?
Yes, I hope so. You know, and I think, again, the challenge is, right, every question we get, now there's 3 or 4 more other ones that we got to dive into. I can say that the other day we had an hour-and-a-half meeting with the athletic directors, and same thing happened. You know, we talked about Gators. Then what was the next? You know, it keeps going and going. But we're committed to continue to work at it and put in as many hours and as much time as we need to make it as safe as we possibly can for everybody, and not just the Ashland students, as well, everybody in the entire league.
Thank you.
Lori, I have one question.
Sure, go ahead, Erin.
Sorry. I have one more question, but it's actually more something probably Ed could answer. Do we have, from the spring and summer sports that were played in Ashland, have we had any confirmed at sport transmissions?
We had 0. And I was in constant communication with the groups, and we had none.
Awesome. Thank you.
And just a second, if I could, Jim, before Stephen, when we talked, and I think Ed hit on it a little bit, we also talked about that monitoring piece. And so you shared with me whose responsibility is, because I asked you the pointed question of whose job is it outside of a coach who's concentrating on lots of other things, who's monitoring the overall to make sure everybody's following the rules and has the authority to pull the plug should things not be being done appropriately.
That's my job. First and foremost, that's my job. Make sure it's safe no matter what, whether we're in this situation or any other situation. That's completely my job.
And one last just thing, I appreciate the delay in the start of competition. I thought that's very appropriate because through this whole thing, I'm like, okay, can't we just walk before we run. You know, let's keep our eye on the ball. The first and foremost thing we need to do is have in-person learning first and foremost. We need to make sure that that's successful and moving forward. And I don't know that we're going to do this. I'm just thinking out loud. If we were to approve going forward at our next meeting, but then later on, before that 10-10 timeline, not want to, you know, take that next step and actually have competitions with other communities, you know, sometime between now and then, just think about what that might mean for us. I mean, it would kind of force us into what Mark had asked about, you know, kind of inter-squad scrimmage situation. But, you know, I appreciate that delay but we might be in a situation where, hey, we're trending in the wrong direction. We want to make sure we're doing everything to stop that trend and reverse it. And taking a next step like that might not seem appropriate at the time. I don't hope that's not the case, but I could foresee us having a conversation about, hold on a second. Yes, we said on here, we want to move forward, but we haven't yet transitioned to remote learning, but we don't want to take that next step with sports because we're not stable at the moment, or we're not trending in the right direction. So.
Can I just say something right there? And I just want to make sure, and I think I said this at your last meeting with the committee, I just want to make sure everybody knows, I am in daily communication with Superintendent Adams with our numbers and what's going on every day.
Thanks, Ed. Jim, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just have one question, Stephen, because I haven't really seen it addressed in any literature yet. But one concern I would have is when we go to 4 seasons, has there been conversation, at least within the TVL, about the potential of that 4-season athlete and the potential of displacement of athletes from their normal sport? So, for instance, maybe since football got moved to the fall 2, some of the football players decide, I'm gonna, maybe they're the best athletes in our school, and they're gonna go out and play soccer and displace a student who would normally be playing soccer because the other student was playing football during that same season. Has there been conversation about the 4-sport athletes and how that displacement could work? Or
there's been conversation about the 4-sport athlete, not necessarily the displacement part, but the MIAA did make it an option that students can participate in 4 seasons. And one of the things that helped with was the out of season coaching. Right. So in terms of Rule 40, we were a little bit more confident in saying, you know what, let's keep it in place, because it's not like those kids have nothing to do. They could potentially join another team, but we haven't talked yet about displacement, what that means, and the numbers, and who would want to.
Right. But I would just say we need to give that some really good consideration. As I sit on the MIAC board, and I hear all of the appeals across the state, and the largest, the greatest number of appeals I hear is about displacement, that kids are getting an extra year to play a sport, or age limitation, and they're taking away a spot from another kid who otherwise would be able to play. And that's one of the concerns I have, is that we would be actually inviting that, where kids who have been playing soccer all these years and would be on the team otherwise may not be because of this.
Yeah, there's certainly that possibility, but again, I also just go back to providing opportunities for kids.
Sure.
Right.
Understood.
So, we can certainly look into it.
Lori, back to the point that Sergeant Berman and Paul were making, does it make sense for us to have an athletics review as a part of the Friday morning weekly conversation?
I'm just assuming that it's all going to be part of that conversation. We'll be reviewing everything that's going on in the district. And if we have to make a decision that pivots from a prior one because of information that has changed, those meetings would be the place for that. And unless everybody else.
Athletics is an agenda item on it. So.
Yep.
Okay. Is there a specific criteria so that we can trend week over week of what we would be presented with? Or is it just going to be an overview?
Right now, I think it's where it sits as add an overview, Aaron, because if there's criteria, it hasn't at least been by this committee been established yet. But certainly, tomorrow will be our first Friday morning meeting, and we will get a sense of the kind of information Jim's going to share, and it will be our opportunity to ask him to, provide information in certain ways if that needs to change after tomorrow.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Yep.
Okay. Any other school committee members before I open it up to the community? Okay, so I'm going to move into the public comment portion. I'm going to ask anyone who wants to say anything to please raise your hand either through the Zoom function or just do this and I will hopefully find you or one of my colleagues will. And please try to limit your comments so that everybody has their chance. I see Mr. Zakili, would you like to start? I'm going to, you're unmuted, I believe.
Yeah,
yes.
Thank you. I actually prepared a statement for today, but before I get into that, I know most of the people on here, but if I'm meeting you for the first time, I'm Pete Zakili. I'm an Ashland Middle School wellness teacher, head wrestling coach at the high school, and also assistant football coach. So I'm just going to read the statement that I kind of put together. Tonight, I'm speaking on the behalf of the Ashland High School Coaches Fraternity and also on the behalf of the Ashland High School student athletes in support of athletics taking place this fall. I want to speak on three things. First, I want to remind everyone on the Zoom meeting and everyone in the community what leadership is telling us and what the data proves. It is safe to participate in athletics. This is the message coming from leaders in the medical field at all levels of our government. People with far more medical, scientific knowledge and educational foundation than any of us could even imagine. At the national level, people like the much respected physician, Dr. Anthony Fauci, who said in a quote directly related to our neighboring state of Connecticut, there is no reason why fall sports cannot resume in the fall. At the state level, there's field biologist and state secretary of the EEA, Kathleen Theorides, who has effectively approved all low-risk sports for all 4 levels of play, which includes outdoor tournaments with multiple teams competing. In addition, the EEA has approved all moderate risk sports for the first 3 levels of play, which includes inter-team games and competition. Locally, you guys just heard from Sergeant Ed Berman, as well as Audrey LaCroix, on their feelings on the plan that was presented by Stephen. If you have any hesitation in listening to what our leadership is telling us, then there are case studies across the country that should ease your mind. Utah has been participating in fall athletics since teams took the fields for practice over a month ago in late July. Soccer teams in Utah played their first games in the first week of August, and even football teams will play their 4th week of games tomorrow night. There have been very few cancellations of these games throughout this time, and although a few cases have been reported, the spread of those confirmed positives has been mitigated. Again, they have been participating in athletics since the last week of July. The state reported a 7-day average positivity rate on July 27th, which was their first day of fall practice, as 9.5%. Yesterday, they reported that same 7-day average positivity rate at 9.1%. I bring up Utah because they've been participating for the longest duration, and they have the longest amount of data available to us. Other states have similar results. Indiana has been participating since early August. I bring up Indiana because just like Utah, their positivity rate is much higher than ours. It's actually over 7%, which is 7 times that of Massachusetts. And these states are just a few of the large majority of the country participating in athletics, and they are not seeing an increase in cases. Still, some may say that that's happening elsewhere. It's not relevant to us. Well, let's look at Massachusetts then. Kids have been competing in baseball since late June, from the youth level all the way up to the Legion, in communities across the state, including our own community. Youth hockey started up in mid-July, and they've been playing games in communities across the state of Massachusetts since August 17th. All the while, the 7-day positivity rate has been in a steady decline. Utah's playing football and seeing decrease in COVID numbers. We are not asking our kids to have that opportunity this fall. Indiana is playing volleyball and are not seeing an increase in their positivity numbers. We are not even asking you to give our kids that opportunity this fall. Massachusetts actually approved volleyball as well, and we're not even asking you to do that for our league. The plan that Stephen Marks presented to you guys from the Tri-Valley League is a safe plan that has been developed at the state level and the league level. It goes above and beyond in meeting all of the health guidelines. It is not even debatable whether or not the league's plan is safe. It is factual that it is. Secondly, I want to bring to the attention to the generally accepted statement that athletics is the extension of the classroom. On our athletic website, it states Ashland Public Schools believe that athletics are a valuable component of education and therefore attempts to provide avenues for students who want to take part in them. Why are we asking parents, remote or hybrid, and not allowing them to make the same decision in athletics? To participate or not to participate should be left up to them. If you really believe that athletics is in fact an extension of the classroom, now more than ever is the time to show that we support our programs and we support providing all students at Ashland High School that experience and all parents in our community to provide that experience for their children. Third, and most importantly, I'm here to advocate for our student athletes and their well-being in a time where I believe there is very little advocacy for them. Our Ashland Public School vision statement says that Ashland Public Schools will be a model district that embraces the academic and social emotional growth of all students. We've emphasized this social, emotional, and mental growth as a foundation of our district over the last 5 years. There is no better place for this to take place than in the athletic environment. This is the essence of how our athletic programs serve our kids the most. If you need evidence of this, I encourage the committee to communicate amongst yourselves in regards to what your children have gotten from participation in Ashland athletics. Better yet, I encourage you to ask them, where would they be if they were not afforded that opportunity? Where would they be in regards to work ethic, perseverance, mental toughness? Where would they be in regards to success in general? I also encourage you to reach out to parents in town. The social emotional growth of our student athletes has never been more apparent than today. If you do not approve athletics in the fall for the start of the fall season, it will be detrimental to their growth in these areas. Our district is deeming these are the most important areas in our student development. I appreciate your time for allowing me to speak. Please take all these remarks into consideration in discussions later tonight and next week. And I encourage you all to review our mission and our vision statements. During this pandemic, it is of the utmost importance that our decisions go hand in hand with our vision in serving our students to the very best of our ability. Anything less should be considered unacceptable. I ask you to put your political views and your personal views aside and think about who you are here to serve, the students of Ashland. Our league has developed a safe plan to return to athletics now. There is no doubt it is in the best interest of our students to see this plan through. I thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Who is next? Let's see, I'm going to try to go through and see if I see any hands up. If you need to unmute yourself to make sure that I know that you're wanting to share.
I don't see anybody.
Anybody? Now's your chance.
Reactions.
Yeah, I don't see any.
Coach McKay, I see somebody. Thank you.
I'm not going to be as intellectual as Mr. Zakili. Obviously, I'm a teacher at the school, and I also coach, and football is not happening this year, so that is not my main priority right now. But having the privilege of working with a lot of our students, male and female, all summer, and seeing with them and communicating with them, I just feel like it needs to be stated how important it is athletics plays as into their mental wellness, into their social emotional wellness. And some of the statements that have been made today about, it's okay to start and get in the building, and that's great, but that's a major part of their upbringing for a lot of these kids. And if there's a safe plan to do it, I'm fully supportive of it. And that's our job as educators, to be here to support it. So that's it. I have no Fauci statistics like Mr. Zakili, or I don't know what the state of Utah is doing right now, but I know that this is a good plan. We should support it for whatever we can do for these kids to be safe. And I just wanted that to be said. Thank you for your time. Good job, Coach Zakili.
Thank you, Mr. McKay. Okay, who's next? It's got to be somebody else who wants to say something.
Brad Myers has hand up.
Yeah, I have a question. I mean, I have a question. Actually, I thought Stephen did an excellent job on his presentation. And I agree 100% with what Pete is saying, and even the last gentleman just spoke there. But like I say, we're not talking a bunch of centurions on the field here. I think we got an excellent plan in place, and I think these kids should be out there playing. I mean, we could sit. I know some of you folks on the call have asked lots of questions, and you can keep asking questions till you're dead, till you're blue in the face. But at the end of the day, let's get the kids out there playing. These are low risk. This is a low risk situation. I think the plan in place is excellent. So. By all means, these kids should get out there and play, and hopefully that you guys see that this is all about the kids and not a bunch of adults that are worried about every little scenario that could possibly pop up. But thank you, Coach, and I think you guys did a great job in your presentation.
Thank you. Who's next?
Hey, Lori, it's Paul Condrat.
Hi, Paul.
So just maybe a clarification on maybe a little bit more about the decision to not pursue middle school sports for the year. As Pete very eloquently described the importance of sports in education, and Mark, you also pointed out the benefits, both physical and emotional, that sports can provide. And I get that there's some connection to having an athletic director or trainer on site, apparently, but what was also discussed is the fact that all of the coaches will be going through an extensive training. So, what risk are we putting kids at by not, I don't see how we're preventing anything by not having the middle school sports. So maybe can we talk about that for a minute?
Do you have anything you can add to what you already said on that, Stephen?
I mean, yeah, the only thing I would add to that is that once the entire league made that decision, if we were going to say we would have a team, we wouldn't have anybody to play against right now. So that's why we're looking into the idea of potentially doing intramurals.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody? One more time.
I don't see anyone more.
I do not either. So I'm about to close the comment period unless there's somebody else who changed their mind. Give you a second. I see a hand raised, so I just need to find you. Tiago, where are you?
I got it.
You got it? Thank you.
Hi, how are you? Hope everybody's doing well.
Hi there.
I'm one of the varsity soccer coaches. I also been coaching club soccer during the summer. I've not experienced any positive cases in any of the summer coaching that I've done. I have not heard any positive cases in the summer leagues that have been going on for soccer. Just putting in the MIAA rules that have been put forth by the Mass Youth Soccer. And the MIAA rules are actually more strict than the Mass Youth Soccer rules that have been put forth. So I, again, support everything that all the coaches have said. And I think it's a good idea for us to get the kids on the field, and especially like Zakili mentioned, the mental health for the kids as well. And I also teach in Framingham. So I kind of get an idea what the kids kind of, need. Like they mentioned, the extension of the classroom there. So I fully support the plan put forth by Stevens.
Thank you. That's helpful. Anybody else? Okay, I don't think I see anybody else.
Lori, there's one person. I think I just saw Melanie Jankowski.
Melanie, where are you?
Sorry, I was on mute.
Hey, Melanie?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
No, I just want to second what Tiago was saying as far as field hockey goes. My daughter's been playing with her club team. They've been practicing. They've been going to tournaments, and it's been actually less strict than what is being proposed. And I totally agree that it's super important that these kids, for their mental health, their physical health, as well as, being part of the school, going in the classrooms. I was a big proponent of that, that the kids are thought about. And I know you're all thinking about them. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, their health and safety is first and foremost. But we haven't had any cases like this in my daughter's club field hockey either. So I thought that might help.
Yeah, that is helpful, Melanie. Thank you for sharing that.
Yep. And and if it helps any as well, I do work in the hospital. I've been working since March with just a surgical mask on top of patients, with many, many patients. No one in my department has gotten sick, thank God. We're just either very lucky or whatever, but with the proper, I think, surgical masks, proper everything that you're planning, I don't see any reason why the kids can't play.
Thanks, Melanie.
Hope that helps. I don't know.
It does.
I'm not saying anything divisive, I hope.
You're fine.
This is a public comment period. So in case anybody is thinking that they want to say something and they're holding it back, this is, all comments are welcome. So anybody else? All right.
Lori, you got another one. Dan Keller raised his hand.
Okay. And I just need to, there you are, Dan. Okay. Hi, Dan.
Hello. Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is well on this Thursday evening. And I just want to reiterate what Coach Zakili and Coach Mota and Coach McKay were saying earlier is, obviously the massive importance of playing this fall and, giving these girls and boys, opportunities to go out and compete on, obviously on the athletic field. And I do want to absolutely say that social emotional learning, it's more than just classroom. Obviously being a teacher in the middle school, I've been, really privileged to learn from Jen Cutler, the social emotional learning counselor in the District of Ashland. And I want to just say that extends to the athletic field as well. So, I just want to make that apparent. I want to make that clear. And I'm absolutely in support of Stephen Mark's proposal for this fall. So thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Dan. Who's next? Anybody else? I'm flipping around. I don't see anybody. Okay. So, seeing no additional comments being offered, that concludes our meeting. We have tomorrow's a meeting in the morning. We're going to be having Friday morning check-ins just to get an understanding of what's happening in the community and in the district. And then next Wednesday at our regular school committee meeting, we're scheduled for a vote on this. So thank you all, especially Stephen, for all the work you and your team have put in. Thank you for all your comments. They are all very helpful and useful. Thank you for your participation, for all the school committee members and Audrey and Ed. And with that, I will take a motion to adjourn unless anybody else has anything to add.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, Mark?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Aye,
Good night.
thank you, Lori.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.